everybody. Today I'm going to talk about 8 things that impact you when you're pregnant. And these are more emotional and mental things. Obviously there's tons of physical changes happening, but these are more the mental and emotional side. And some of them are things that I didn't know, and I think they should be mainstream things that everybody knows and everyone knows kind of how to handle, but they're not. So that's why I am doing this today. So 8 things that I didn't know or that I think are really important to talk about that happen to you during pregnancy. So I am in my 3rd trimester right now, so I thought it'd be a good time to talk about this because I've been through a lot of these now and I'm through most of the pregnancy. So the first one I want to talk about, also because I'm going to have to refer to my list and remember what all these 8 things are, is pregnancy brain. I don't know if you guys have heard of this term. Some people call it different things, but basically a lot of women experience kind of a decline in their really cognitive abilities, I guess is the overall term, but they feel more forgetful, they feel more foggy, and it's just kind of this overall sense of just not as sharp mentally as you normally feel. And this isn't something that I was prepared for in any way, but I definitely felt it, especially in the 1st trimester. I feel like that was the worst of everything for me, and I don't know, I feel like it was really extra foggy then. I still feel a little foggy sometimes now, but at that point, like, I would be trying to say something and I couldn't figure out the right way to say it or the right word, or it just almost felt like I was really tired, which obviously you are. So if you're exhausted and you're just overwhelmed and everything just feels like really flooded, it's hard to really think of the things you want to say in the way you want to say them. So that was one that I was surprised about, and one that I think we need to talk about and prepare for, because it's a little bit surprising and difficult, and you kind of have to work around it and figure out how to like work around it and maybe leave more reminders for yourself or give yourself more time to do things. So that is the first one, and that also justifies that I have to look at this because I will forget because I have pregnancy brain. So the other one, I mean, all of these I think are really important, but one of the ones that was also surprising to me was that, and not necessarily surprising, but just feeling it and feeling the impact of it was more than I thought it would be, was you can feel this really big sense of vulnerability, and it brings up a lot of things to the surface. So that's why a lot of things come up during pregnancy, because we're facing so much and our lives are changing so much, our bodies are changing so much, and a lot of stuff can come up to the surface, whether it's past issues or fears or anything like that, but also just kind of a general sense of vulnerability. And this was kind of surprising to me because I don't feel this normally. I mean, I felt it like physically and emotionally. I just felt more vulnerable. And that obviously makes sense because you're caring for another life. Like, there's a lot more at stake than just you. You can't like do a lot of the things that you would normally do without thinking about them. And that just made me feel incredibly vulnerable. Like, I have to think about all of these things before I do them, when normally I'm a bit more impulsive and I just kind of do things and figure it out and do what I want. I have all this energy, but now it's totally shifted, and that's been a bit of a struggle for me. It was definitely, again, more of a struggle in the 1st trimester, and now I feel a lot better about it, but that's taken work. It's taken affirmations, it's taken reading a lot and kind of educating myself and all that kind of stuff. Meditation. I wouldn't have survived this far if I didn't have meditation. So that's been something that I thought was really interesting for me. The next one I think should be talked about all the time is body image issues. And obviously it comes up for a lot of people. It comes up in different ways, and I expected it to come up, and I was prepared for this to be really hard. I always knew it would be hard for me in so many ways, but the body piece is a huge one because everything is changing so much, and you're trying to focus on being healthy and planning and doing all of these things while your body is making some major shifts and changes. And that can be really shocking and really difficult to deal with. And I think one of the big things that's helped me through this part has been surrounding myself with really positive people and literature. And this has helped every way too. This will help, I mean, this has helped like anxiety and all that kind of stuff too, that I'll get into more after this one. But a lot of the books and things that I've read and the Instagram people that I follow and all of that, they're very positive. They're very body positive. They're not caught up in size and weight or any of that. And then they also help you kind of figure out how to combat that when other people aren't super helpful in that. Birth Without Fear is definitely one of my favorite books so far, and it's really empowering in that way. And I mean, it breaks down like how comparison hurts us, and being caught up, our culture caught up so much on weight really hurts us and all of that. But that's something that I found interesting, because so many people ask about my weight or how much weight I've gained, or they're so curious about that. And I find that incredibly unhelpful for me and for them. So I feel like a lot of people that ask, a lot of them are women, they're almost like documenting it to use it to compare themselves to me. And that's either going to be judging me, like, oh, she gained this much and I only gained this much, or like putting themselves down, like, oh, well, she only gained this much, so that means I can only gain that much, right? It just feels like there's judgment that's going to come from that question, and it's either going to come at me or it's going to come at them. So I don't really feel like there's a reason to talk about that or ask that question, and I feel like it only leads us to negative places. I feel like a lot more healthy and helpful questions would be like, how is your pregnancy going? How are things going? Like checking in to make sure everything's going well. Have there been any, health complications? That kind of thing is fine to ask and support someone on, but we don't need to be so focused on weight. And I think because our culture, like I said, is already so caught up on weight and so caught up on body image and caught up on what we should look like or what we should be doing, I think that hurts us in the long run. And I've seen some posts from friends, even recently, really struggling with this. And I also feel like setting themselves up for an expectation of what they feel like their body should look like and how it should bounce back and what, how much weight they should gain during pregnancy. And then they feel really depressed and miserable because that's not happening. And I think those expectations are just all wrong and shouldn't be there. And it should be a time where we're for sure focusing on getting the right nutrients and feeding our body in the right way, but also just like giving ourselves a break from all that it's going through and relaxing a bit. And it's not a time to be focused on losing weight or anything like that. It's just a time to be focused on being as healthy as you can be and giving yourself a break for the other things and the cravings and stuff, because it's not a time to be judgmental of yourself on that, right? If there's ever a time to give yourself a little break, it's this. So I think that's a big piece of all of this, and I could do a whole video on that, in pregnancy and not in pregnancy, of how a lot of the stuff in the media and everything sets us up more to feel bad about ourselves, and I don't like that. So feel free to ask any questions or comments or any follow-up you want or you'd like to see on any of these topics, but on that one for sure. So the next one is that it's really an emotional roller coaster, right? And that we kind of are prepped for, but like seeing it in a movie, super, not realistic, or just hearing about it isn't the same as experiencing it and knowing how to experience it and knowing how to get support and how your partner can help you and your family can help you and everything, because the ups and downs are so major. And on the far end of this, they can be really intense. Like you could develop serious depression when you haven't had it before, or it could just get worse, or other mental health issues you have could get a lot worse, or you could just have serious ups and downs and mood swings. And that's really normal. That's the thing. I mean, if you're experiencing super severe depression, get help, get support, like, look at that for sure, obviously. But the normal kind of ups and downs also are really intense and also need some help and support and some understanding. And this was really helpful to be talking about. Like, I was talking about my ups and downs. I was kind of trying to normalize them and kind of try to find things that would help. I was talking to my partner a lot about it and talking about what he could do to kind of help me. And then we also just found ways to like laugh at it. Like when I have a breakdown about some of my ridiculous ones, there's been a few where I've just like started bawling seemingly for no reason, but then it was so ridiculous that I was also laughing. So it was just like this hysterical, ridiculous time. And one was when there were dogs barking in the middle of the night and they wouldn't stop barking. And I don't know why that triggered me. That happens all the time, right? But I felt like it would never end and like I would never sleep and I just couldn't do anything and I couldn't do this. And I just had this whole big breakdown. So now we kind of laugh about it, and he knows sort of how to support me and what I need and what I want in those moments. So that obviously is really helpful. And that's important. And if you don't have someone there to help you do that, you can get support for sure on social media. There's some great communities that I found and great little support groups. So you have to get yourself support for that, because otherwise you just feel crazy alone. But if you feel crazy and can laugh at it with other people and get support, then it's a lot easier to handle and it will pass. Again, mine was the worst in the first trimester and hasn't been as bad since, but I mean, that could change at any point, right? None of this is linear like they talk about, and also all of it can change all the time. So I'm not like saying it won't happen again. It could happen at any point. I've just kind of accepted that and ready to deal with it when and if it comes. So I've done these out of order, so I need to make sure I get all these now. Anxiety and fears. This is the big one. So like I said, you can have depression, worsening depression and all of that. You can also have worsening anxiety, and that could be really severe. And I really think that a level of anxiety is probably really normal within all of this. That doesn't mean it's comfortable, but it's really normal. I've had a lot more anxiety and just random fears about things that I'm normally not an anxious person, but things would just pop up and I would just be so anxious about that, or I would like have this crazy fear of something happening or something, you know, bad happening or something happening to the baby or something. And all of that is really normal because you're transitioning again into this independent person who takes care of themselves to this person who's now having to care for the life of someone else who's so vulnerable, right? And so that comes up, and that's really normal to come out and to pop up. And I think that's, again, important to talk about. So I talk about these things with my friends and my family and my partner and even groups online, so I can be processing them. Because if I just let them sit inside, then they get bigger and they get worse. But if I talk about them and I can kind of challenge them and be like, okay, I see what that is. That's an anxious thought. And maybe I can do something about it to plan or prep a little bit. But most of the time I just need to get it out and try to move on and cope. So that's usually what I do. And that kind of goes into the next one that I've experienced a lot, which are crazy dreams. And these are separate categories on this list because people have tons of crazy dreams that fall into different categories, but a lot of mine have been connected with the fears and anxieties that I'm feeling. And that happens for me normally. Like if I'm working through something or I'm anxious about something, it will pop up in a dream. But this has been way more extreme and super vivid. So really vivid, crazy dreams can be really common here. A lot of people report super vivid sex dreams. A lot of people report really fear-based dreams, but super just wild and vivid, almost kind of cinematic type dreams. And some of them can shake you up because they're pretty graphic. I've had a few that have been based in, you know, fears or anxieties of something happening to the baby that have been pretty dark and pretty difficult. And so when I wake up, I feel that and I just don't feel good. And I have to work that out and talk about it and calm myself down and do some meditation, or, you know, I've woken up in the middle of the night and just watched Netflix because I needed a quick distraction from how bad those dreams were. So that's really normal. And for me, with a lot of these, it's really uncomfortable, and I don't want to be dreaming about that or feeling that or thinking about that. But I also know that it's my mind and my body working through all of this. So I'm just kind of, again, trying to deal with it and not judge it, but try to set myself up in the best way I can. So I have, you know, Netflix ready if I wake up, I have a book, I have snacks, I have water, like everything's there so I can utilize it and cope with it. And some of my books, again, have been great to turn to kind of calm me down and remind me that I can do this, and this is natural, and our bodies were meant for this, and all the crazy that comes up we can get through, and they're kind of really empowering. So that's how I handle that piece. But don't be surprised if dreams get out of control. And it's kind of fun to share them with other people going through this too, because they're obviously not going to judge you if they're experiencing the same things, and you can just talk about how mad this all is. The next one that I have experienced a lot, and most people do, is just feeling exhausted. So feeling really tired. I mean, even like my breath. So everything's getting smashed, right? In your body, your lungs are getting smushed. Everything's kind of moving, and there's more strain on your body. So that alone makes it harder to breathe, like as I'm talking to you or as I'm working out. I feel more of that. So breathing is really important, and taking deep breaths and taking it slow and slowing down, and like working out, taking more breaks and bringing down the intensity. But really the piece here is just being exhausted, which means you have to try to find more time to rest and to kind of have more downtime and give yourself that and not judge that. And I know that's a lot harder for people who work really long hours or have other kids or obligations. It's way harder to find that rest time. And we have to find it in little ways, or we're just gonna burn out and all the symptoms get worse, right? So if I can have even a little nap in the afternoon, I'll try to do that, or I'll just try to sit back and put my feet up for a minute. I do a lot of short little meditations when I can, just because I find that resets me. I drink a ton of water, a ton of cold water helps. I think so many things impact the exhaustion, right? And one of those in the beginning for me was not being able to drink all the coffee that I normally drink. So that added to the mood swings and the anxiety and the exhaustion for sure. So now I've kind of altered that. So I have decaf coffee, you know, but not a lot of it. And then I supplement with a lot of nutrients and a lot of smoothies and a lot of fruit, a lot of cold water, a lot of mocktails. All of those things really help manage the exhaustion. And I really feel a lot better. So a lot of these I'm going to try to keep up these ways of coping after, because before I just would have probably turned to coffee, right? I may have meditated and added that in as well, but not as much. And I would just kind of get a quick caffeine fix. But now I find like I could even take a quick break and watch a TED Talk and have a smoothie and feel better, or have a quick nap, or yeah, supplement with that kind of stuff. And I've found that a lot of those things really, really help. So give yourself rest to deal with the exhaustion, add in as much rest as you can, and then find other ways to help lift you up and bring you back up in ways that are natural and won't hurt you or add any complications. So how many is that? I think I've got most of them. The last one, I believe, I'm gonna have to go through this before we end again, but the last one that I really wanted to talk about, because I've had it come up with other clients that have been pregnant, is if you're on medication right now for anything physical, but I'm really, you know, this is focused more on mental health. So if you're on antidepressants or you're on any of these medications, don't just go off of them. I had a client who found out she was pregnant and just stopped all medication because she heard it was gonna hurt the baby, and then she crashed big time. Like, she had a really difficult time mentally, emotionally, physically. It was really, really rough. So don't do that. As soon as you find out you're pregnant, go to your doctor, talk to your therapist, talk to your psychiatrist, talk to your whole team, and adjust as you need to. And they may make some adjustments, they may add in some other things, they may bring your dosage down, they may try to change your dose or your medication, and that is fine, but you need to do it with their help and supervision, because if you just go off all of your medications or you just do what you think is best, you could end up really crashing and really putting yourself and the baby at more risk. And there are a lot of medications that are approved during pregnancy, and they always have to be weighed, the pros and cons, because medications have risks and they have impacts. And sometimes it's worth the risk if it's not, a serious birth defect or something, if it's gonna help keep you sane and okay, if it's gonna keep you alive, right? That's what we need. But a lot of doctors can help you find that mix of things that will be right for you. I would also suggest adding in some natural things as much as you can. Hopefully your doctor's open to that. You could also see, a naturopath or a midwife or someone to help with some of that, because a lot of people, including myself, have found some of the natural things really helpful, but you have to be careful with those when you're pregnant. So you can't just try supplements and teas, like you would normally, but you still can try some with someone else's input and supervision. So I just, text my doctor or doula when I have these questions and have them help me figure out what would be best for this. But add in natural things, work through it as, natural if you want to and if you can, but also know that you can still do excuse me, the medical piece, because that is possible and you don't have to go off cold turkey. That will be more harmful than it may be beneficial. And maybe you guys do decide you want to come off the medications, but that has to be done very subtly, very slowly, planned, and supervised. So please don't go off it cold turkey by yourself. It's so bad. I have worked through so many people when they call me and they're having all of these issues because they did that without talking to anybody. So let me just make sure we got all of these. So you can take medication, guys. Don't go off it. Exhaustion is really common. You will have crazy dreams. Anxiety and fears will probably go up. You'll have a lot of body image issues. And remember, comparison and expectations and judgments, those hurt us and other people. There'll be emotional roller coasters, and that can include depression. You'll feel a lot more vulnerable. Everything will come up to the surface. And a little bit more on that is a lot of your past fears will come up. My doula kind of talks about it as you're facing death, like you're facing life and death kind of for yourself and the baby, but birth is sort of facing that thing for you. And so it's going to bring up a lot of that fear and anxiety. I also wanted to mention fears about motherhood are really common. So if you're scared you're not going to be a good mom, or you have trauma there, that's all going to come up. Like everything that you've struggled with will probably come up to the surface, and it needs to be dealt with and processed through, and you need love and support through all of that. But don't be surprised if that all kind of creeps up, all the little trauma and all the stuff that we've been through, right? And all the negative messages we've got and all the fears we have for our future and for our kids and everything, those will come up, and that's really normal. But get support and get help, and please comment or message me if you need help. And the last one is pregnancy brain. I believe that's all of them. So those are kind of my things that I've experienced so far. Please add if you've experienced more or you think more important to talk about. There's so many things we could talk about, so many physical things, so many mental things, so many emotional things. The flood in hormones just brings on so much, and all of this just brings on so much. So we can continue adding to this list, and then I'll also do more, postpartum and more things that come up where I'll answer your guys' questions on this. So if you have any, you can submit them anonymously on my website, or you can send me an email, or you can comment below, and we'll keep working through all of this and supporting each other and loving each other. And please, let's keep this as positive as we can. If you guys do leave comments in some of the other videos, it gets a little a little sketchy sometimes, but I really like to keep things as positive and uplifting and as supportive for each other as we can. So let's try to keep that in mind and just, you know, we all need a little more love and support. So that's the goal with all of this. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful, and I will follow up with you guys soon.